Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our latest edition of Valley Veterans Forum here at CMAC, the Community Media Access Collaborative in Fresno, California. Tonight our subject is the Veterans Treatment Court here in Fresno, California, and my guests include Judge Brian Alvarez, who was instrumental in the beginning and the foundation of the court, and Gid Adkisson, who are with the court, who assist, as mentors, we assist the veterans who are going through the court system. Judge, at first I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of the Veterans Treatment Court before it came to Fresno.
So the court initially in 2016 wanted to open this Veterans Treatment Court, and as a sentencing judge, I saw people who I knew were justice-involved veterans go through the system, but for which there was nothing available to them through our court to assist them and help them through the court process. And so I knew, and other judges knew, that there were statutes in place that allowed our court and our judges to address each of the issues that these veterans would have. These veterans would come back many times from theaters of combat with TBI, PTSD, or other issues pertaining to their service, and then would become justice involved. So in 2016, myself and Judge Chittick of the Fresno County Superior Court began talking about how we can start the process to initiate a collaborative court. This collaborative court was involved in January 2016 with the initial investigation of it by going to different superior courts and seeing the process that they used at the time. So we traveled to San Mateo County and watched their court process, Veterans Court. San Mateo County already had a court. We also traveled to Sacramento County and saw the same process likewise. And from that, we took what we thought were the best practices for Fresno County Superior Court. One of those best practices was to use a veteran mentor to assist the justice-involved veteran and guide them through the criminal justice process and the VA process. Mm-hmm. So in 2016, in June 2016, we actually started the first session of the Veterans Treatment Court. And we've been going from that point on, meeting every couple of weeks in the Fresno County Superior Court.
Good. Could you give us a little bit better idea of who the justice-involved veteran may be and what qualifies them to be involved in the Veterans Treatment Court?
So their qualifications generally have to be VA qualified, so they have to have been a military member of any of the service branches. And generally, to be involved with the VA, it usually is involved with a discharge process that's something that will allow them to be involved in the VA process. So if there's a bad conduct discharge, they might not be eligible for services of the VA. Mm-hmm. Because we're not designated any specific funding for this court process, we look to the VA to be the care provider. Now, the people whom we typically see are people who are coming off of active duty, or in some cases have been off of active duty for many years. And these individuals, by virtue of their service, have become involved with mental health issues. This is what we call a nexus between their military service and their mental health issues. And these issues cause them to become justice involved. Mm-hmm. So typically whom we're seeing are people maybe who are suffering from PTSD, or TBI, or sexual military trauma, for instance, too.
Okay. How long does a program typically take?
So there is a minimum of 18 months and up to about 3 years. We've had a couple of graduations already, so some of our justice-involved veterans have already gone through the process and successfully completed that process and treatment, and have gone on to better themselves, including even giving back as mentors themselves. The process as a minimum is 18 months up to 3 years, though, essentially.
Good. What are the benefits that are to be derived for the veteran who completes the program?
So the benefits are statutory, and it's not to say that the process itself is a walk in the park, because the Veterans Treatment Court is not that. It's a very involved process, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel for these veterans.
Mm-hmm.
That is having their case, if it's able to be, reduced to a misdemeanor case, and then having their plea withdrawn and the case ultimately dismissed, so it's removed from the record. So that allows them to have a restoration of most of their civil rights. And so that is a motivating factor for many people who are justice involved. And this is something that's not typically given to other people who are granted formal probation. Our justice involved veterans in the Veterans Treatment Court are people who are on formal either misdemeanor or felony probation. Majority of them are on felony probation. We do have a few misdemeanor offenders though too.
You know, we've had a success story that was noted recently in one of the major television stations, and it talked about Nick Ramey, who was a participant in the Veterans Treatment Court and was so impressed with what happened through his progress that he decided to volunteer and become a mentor himself. So to further explain the court, I'd like to segment into this video of the Nick Ramey involvement in the court that tells a lot in a short period of time. So we'll show that right now.
There's a lot of good things that go on in Fresno, and there's a lot of good things that come out of the criminal justice system. I think this is a really great way to show some of the positive things that happen every single day.
Inspiring the Valley, Wednesday at 6 and 11 on KC24.
If you ask someone in law enforcement, they might tell you that one of the best things to see is someone turning their life around after they've broken the law.
In tonight's Inspiring the Valley, Juanita Stevenson shows us how a young veteran is giving back to those who reached out to him.
Louisa May Alcott once said, "I'm not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship." A more apt description for Nick Ramey's life may not be found. 2 years ago, Ramey was facing a serious storm.
There's no way I was going to live to 32. There's no way I was going to live to 40. You know, closed casket pretty soon. That was me. Supernova, burn bright, die young.
Ramey, 32, served in Iraq. He returned home angry with a substance abuse problem and suffering from PTSD. He got in trouble with the law, facing a serious charge and jail time.
You know, when I say the district attorney saved my life, I really mean that. I was just about as depressed as it got.
District Attorney Lisa Smithcamp recommended Ramey be sent to Veterans Court. Here, veterans go through what can be a challenging program of treatment and counseling.
Many of them have really profound mental health issues, PTSD issues that has resulted in, for example, use of alcohol or violence, responding to things violently, those kinds of things. And they really have to put in a lot of work and effort to turn that around.
Nick Ramey embraced the program, turned his life around, and graduated from the program with the help of his mentor, Vietnam veteran Gid Adkisson, who's still in his life today.
Having a veteran mentor, I would say, is critical. I would be able to picture myself in the program with a mentor that wasn't a veteran.
Knowing just how critical mentors are for a vet's success in the program, Ramey chose to become a mentor himself. He knows what his brothers are facing.
They don't see the big picture. They only see what their anger or depression allows them to see, or their substance abuse allows them to see. You don't have to butt heads with everything. You can cease fire. And there are some groups that are legitimately helping veterans. And if you could cease fire for 3 seconds, just 3 seconds, cease fire, you know, you're going to see that, you know, they're here to help. They are really here to help.
For law enforcement, seeing someone like Ramey turn his life around makes up for what can sometimes be a thankless job.
I think the Nick Rameys of our world here in the DA's office, the people that do succeed, the people that go on to be better husbands and fathers, and then turn around and start contributing to the community, it really just fills us back up.
I look down on a lot of things I did, and I look at it from a much healthier perspective, a much less self-centered perspective. So I'm happy where I'm at.
For Inspiring the Valley, Juanita Stevenson, KC24, local news that matters.
Such a great story.
It is, it is. I like it when they turn their lives around and then give back.
He's done it all.
Yeah.
My next guest is Gid Adkisson, who is the mentor co-coordinator for the program. And I'd like to ask Gid a couple of questions about what it's like to be a mentor. Tell us a little bit about the veteran mentor requirements.
The primary requirement is the person has to be a veteran. And secondly, you need to have a concern and a desire to reach back and help the younger men come forward. And they're good people, they're good men, good young men. We have a couple of women as well who have just taken some wrong steps in life and need some help orienting themselves back to get on a better path in their life. So what the Veterans Treatment Court does is kind of allow them to reboot, hit a reset button. And the mentors are like coaches. We come alongside, help them in through the process. Sometimes they don't understand their treatment plan, whether they have to do certain things. We sit down with them, have coffee with them once a week or so, maybe every other week, and explain to them, this is what's got to be done, here's where you're at, here's where you're going. Try to give them some hope for the future. And in terms of the requirement, the physical requirements, a mentor needs to meet with his veteran once a month, make one phone call a week, and just generally stay in touch. And it doesn't take very long for a bond to be established between the mentor and the mentee. If you come to court on a Friday afternoon and look how we operate, you'll see the mentees, the younger men mostly, not all, but mostly younger men, 30 years old plus or minus, scattered around. And then there'll be grandpas with hair like mine, or not much hair, scattered around. And so they're the mentors, these are the mentees. And so it's not that hard really to establish a kind of mentoring, coaching, come alongside relationship, because the younger men gravitate towards the advice and consultation of the older men. And people ask, what's required. First of all, the mentors are coming alongside the veterans. We don't have to be psychologists, we don't have to be counselors, we don't have to have some high-powered educational skills. When people ask me, I say the main thing you need is to care for these younger veterans who need our help, and common sense, because these guys get themselves in some messes that you would have a hard time believing if you weren't there. And just to give them common sense advice about, hey, this doesn't work, you already know that, you need to go this way. And so we have a very, very good success rate, and sometimes it takes a couple of months for chemistry to develop, but it almost always developed, and a bond is formed, and I think will last for a long time between the mentors and the individual mentees. Mm-hmm. So.
Now, insofar as the requirements for a mentor who wants to enter the program, I know there are some requirements, a background check, for instance.
That's correct. First of all, you have to want to do it, and it's not very time consuming, or it doesn't suck up a whole bunch of your life. But as I said, a mentor needs to be a veteran. Myself and my counterpart, Doug Ricks, do an interview and talk about what the program is like. And I usually send them some information, a couple of video clips about what's required. No felonies or any negative things in their background, and
about their own service record.
They have to have an honorable discharge, mm-hmm. And we try to match a mentor, Army with Army, Navy with Navy. That doesn't always work. We also look at the personality and the kind of people involved in the situation, where we want to have good chemistry between the mentor
Sure.
and the mentee. And have to have a background check. You get fingerprinted, and a couple things like that. It usually takes from the time somebody says, I would like to be a mentor, till the time they're actually a mentor. The background check and so forth takes about 3 or 4 weeks. We like for a prospective mentor to come to one court session, watch how the proceedings go, and make sure, yes, this is something I want to do, and have their heart be in the game.
Yeah. And my own experience has been that once the procedure starts, it runs pretty smoothly.
Yes.
Just as an aside, you are normally back in the chambers, meeting with the judge and the other, the DA, for instance, the public defender, the other key people that are involved, so that by the time you come back out into the courtroom, you already have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen, what's going to be going down, and if there's any problem areas that you can somehow
That's correct.
let us know about ahead of time, which is really a big help.
Right. And may I say that the mentors tend to become advocates for their mentees, and we kind of watch out for them. So they have a treatment plan they're supposed to follow each week, and in the case of a misunderstanding about, well, I thought I'm doing what I'm supposed to, the mentor gets involved and coordinates with the VA and the mentee to make sure that there's a good communication, the mentee understands what he's supposed to do, the VA is in agreement, and then that the mentor follows the treatment plan as prescribed. And we just sort of help and coach them along, and they will hit a stumbling block along the way from time to time, and we're here to help them understand what they need to do. If there's a miscommunication, get things cleared up. Things that they themselves would be a little bit bewildered about. I'm in trouble, but I don't know why. Well, okay, let's talk about it. So you really do help, just by virtue of your life experience, help them get a stable footing on what they've got to do and where they're going. So.
Yeah, it's been very rewarding to be a mentor, I can say that.
Yes, it is very rewarding.
Well, thanks again for your comments about the program. As it turns out, Liz Diaz, who's the public defender, who was to be a guest on this program tonight, had other obligations and couldn't attend. So I'd like to touch, with your help, on some of the things that she pointed out in our training session last year. One of the things I think that's fairly significant is the definition of a specialty court. And we have a couple of slides that we can post to kind of go over what those involve. But the specialty court is what it's called. This is designed specifically to address issues like this.
So essentially, what most court processes are adversarial. You'll have 2 parties going at it, or more than 2 parties going at it, and generally their positions are diametrically opposed. The specialty court, or this collaborative court, brings together a number of people who all have the same goal. Here, it's the district attorney of this county, it's the public defender of this county, who each have an interest in this, and such that they're making the sessions themselves and being the representative for their party themselves. They get together in a collaborative process and come up with an idea or a plan about where a case should go, whether it first should be referred to the Veterans Treatment Court. Some cases don't qualify in the first instance. This collaborative court is an agreement generally amongst the parties that this person should be here. This person is a veteran who became justice involved by virtue of the military service. And so it has an emphasis more on treatment than it would be on punishment.
Exactly. I was going to ask you that next. The goal is treatment rather than punishment. And although it is a criminal court, we have to keep that in mind. Let's talk about the civil code that Liz brought up in the training session. That has to do with veteran client eligibility, alternative sentencing, and the things that can qualify a person for the Veterans Treatment Court, things like sexual trauma and TBIs and things like that.
So Penal Code Section 1170.9 is the empowering statute that allows judges and the attorneys to have their client considered or the defendant considered for the Veterans Treatment Court. There are some things that have to occur first, and Fresno County has a different set of standards for allowing a person to come into it. By agreement of both the DA and the defense counsel, certain types of offenders can't be accepted into the Veterans Treatment Court. You won't have people who are validated gang members, for instance, coming in. You don't have people who are registered sex offenders coming in. Certain types of offenses don't qualify in the first instance for a grant of formal probation, so these people generally will not be seen in the Veterans Treatment Court. These are people who are recognized as being someone who is eligible for the services and being eligible for the services of probation department too, who will monitor their compliance.
Oh, yeah.
So some of the remedies involved at the end, and I've talked about that earlier, are if a person successfully completes the program, the penal code allows for that person's plea to be withdrawn and the case to be dismissed. That's a huge incentive for somebody who wants to keep their record clean and not have any history.
Yeah, it's extremely important in this day and age when the competition for jobs is so fierce and there's so many skilled people, both coming out of the military and in the civilian life. Last thing we notice is that the judge delivers a court order and that becomes an order, and sometimes it winds up sending the veteran participant back to jail or prison, unfortunately.
That's true. I mean, it's no walk in the park to go through the Veterans Treatment Court. The benefits are great if you successfully complete the program, but it's not a picnic by any means, and in fact it may be more onerous to the veteran going through the process. They may be monitored more closely for compliance. The treatment plan by the VA will be known by the judge, and the Veterans Justice Outreach Officer will also advise the court whether or not this person is complying with the treatment plan. Probation Department will advise the court, the judge, whether or not the person's being compliant with other terms and conditions of the probation. And if these things don't happen, then this veteran can expect to have some sanctions imposed on them. And as you noted, some of those sanctions can be imposition of a jail term. And ultimately, if a person fails the Veterans Treatment Court, which hasn't been very often, I would add, that person exposes himself to a prison term.
Well, lastly, I wanted to touch on some of the things that the DA, Lisa Smitkamp, mentioned in our training session. As you pointed out, the Veterans Treatment Court is a collaborative court that doesn't exist in adversarial situation that might typically exist between the DA's office and the Public Defender's office, which is important to all of us because we want to see the success of the veteran as being the paramount issue here. And I think we pretty much touched on all of the major issues. If you'd like to add anything to what I've said, I'd certainly like to include it right now, some of your own commentaries.
I would say, as a non-legal person who has come into this situation, and as you mentioned, we do go in chambers for about an hour before each court session. I've been very impressed at the fact that you've got the district attorney, public defender, the judge, the VA, the mentors, all with one goal: help this veteran get his life straightened out, get out of the trouble he's in, expunge his record, and have a new start to a good life. So it's not what does this guy deserve or what does the law allow us to do punitively to him. The court is set up to help veterans, not to punish veterans. And that's just been very impressive to me to listen to the judge say over and over again, okay, what can we do to help this guy move forward? And it's all towards helping the veterans, and we've seen a very good success rate. And so it's not punitive, and it's not something with a negative connotation. It's all towards a very positive outcome in the veteran's life.
And I think that's one thing that we've, as mentors, have to experience too, that the veteran participant often is very apprehensive being in court.
That's very
Many
true.
times it's the first time they've been in court.
Yes.
Sometimes it isn't, but the bottom line is there's not a big deal of trust. The trust has to be built up between
That's true.
the veteran participant and you as the mentor to prove to them, hey, we've got your back, we're on your side,
Yep.
we're not against you, we're for you.
Right.
Okay. And that's pretty much the way.
Absolutely.
What I want to add to that is that I really do believe that our mentors are the special ingredient that in this recipe for success for each of these veterans, and we couldn't do it without the service of our veteran mentors who are assisting the court, the process. Data has shown, the literature has shown that the best way to address this situation with a justice-involved veteran is for them to have a battle buddy, essentially, somebody who's
Yeah.
a mentor. And
Sure.
for that, you guys should be commended and thanked.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Folks who come to homeless court are not looking for a handout. And even if they come there thinking they're getting a handout, we try to reinforce in their minds that we're here to give them a hand up. And the hand up is to help them take that next big step into becoming productive members of the community. Homeless court is so different because it gives you a lot of human contact with the individual who committed the offense, in this case, infractions. It's not the end of the world. It's not a crime of the century. And I think homeless court allows us to humanize the defendants and also humanize what they've done.
We transformed the criminal justice system. When the first person actually appeared in court on a handball court, it was that person showed up, they walked away, there was an audible gasp from the audience, not just the participants, but the sponsors, the service providers, like, there's no paddy wagon? You mean this is for real? You're really going to honor what we're doing in this program? And word gets out in the community, the floodgates open, people kept coming back to the court.
So the amazing thing about homeless court is that the defense attorneys and the prosecutors and the courts all work together, hand in hand, come to an understanding of what the goal is. The purpose is to get the person whole again. Not only does it save the courts the volume of cases that could be litigated, but it also saves the entire community in terms of making our community safer and finally getting our homeless folks off the streets and back to leading productive lives. So it's a win-win for everybody.
We'd like to thank you again for joining us here at CMAC for our latest edition of Valley Veterans Forum here in Fresno, California. Please join us again for future editions of Valley Veterans Forum here at CMAC in Fresno, California. And thanks again for joining.